Okay, so welcome everyone to Lowe Connects, Spotlight Artists of Color in the Performing and the Visual Arts. My name is Jody Seifer. I'm the Curator of Education at the Lowe Art Museum. And I would like to thank you all for joining us tonight. And I would also like to thank our presenters, Melvin Butler, Beverly McIver, and Valerie Coleman, as well as our many partners that made this event possible: the Frost School of Music, the Center for the Humanities and the One Book, One You program, Duke University, Craven Allen Gallery, and the Bernice Steinbaum Gallery. I'm going to give you just a few reminders and introduce our moderator and then turn the event over to him. So Melvin, if you can give me the next slide, please. So just want to let you know we have 2 virtual events in April that will feature amazing work from faculty and students that they've accomplished using works of art from the Lowe's permanent collection. So our next Lowe Connects, save the date, is April 8th at 5:30. It's Art History and Augmented Reality, Designing Virtual Art Exhibitions in the Classroom. Dr. Karen Matthews, Associate Professor of Art History, and her students will present a virtual exhibition experience that they created using augmented reality. And the next slide, please. And on April 22nd at 7 p.m., we'll have The Distance Between You and Me Is Us. It's our Art Lab at the Lowe 2021 exhibition, which is virtual this year. And Dr. Heather Dyack, Associate Professor of Art History, and student curators invite you to join a live conversation about their exhibition that they've curated using works from the Lowe's permanent collection of photography. Next slide, please. And you can register for both of these events as well as all of our other events on the Lowe's website, lowe.miami.edu, if you go under the calendar section. Next slide, please. And just one quick note that a survey link should pop up at the end of the webinar, as well as you'll get an email. We really appreciate you taking the time to fill this out for us. We know it's similar questions if you've attended our other events, but each event we need to sort of get the feedback from you, and we really want to hear your opinions, and we appreciate your support. Next slide. Okay, so now I will introduce our moderator, Dr. Melvin Butler, and then turn the program over to his capable hands. So Melvin Butler is an Associate Professor of Musicology at the University of Miami. He earned his bachelor's degree from Berklee College of Music and an MA and PhD in music from NYU. He's a scholar performer with broad interest in music and religion of the African diaspora, and he has conducted field research on popular music and religion in Haitian and Jamaican communities. His book, Island Gospel: Pentecostal Music and Identity in Jamaica and the United States, explores the theological and experiential connections between Jamaican and African American gospel performance. At the heart of his work lies a critical reconsideration of how music relates to processes of boundary crossing, identity formation, and social positioning in post-colonial contexts. He is an internationally acclaimed jazz saxophonist and has performed with Brian Blade and the Fellowship Band for over 2 decades. He is featured on several albums and has numerous awards. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Melvin Butler.
Thank you, Jody, for that kind introduction. I'm just honored to be here with you all, and glad for all of you who were able to join us. I'm so looking forward to this conversation this evening, and as I said, I'm honored to be the moderator for this. I'm a musicologist, but I'm interested in the arts in general, and tonight we have 2 very compelling figures, I think, in our sort of artistic community writ large. And I'm going to introduce each of them right before they present a little bit about their work, starting with Beverly McIver. And so I'll say a few words about her. She'll present her work, and then we'll have Professor Valerie Coleman. And at the end, we'll have some time for some discussion, hopefully some lively discussion, and also some Q&A. So I hope that you all enjoy what's to come and are preparing some nice comments and questions for our panelists. Our first special guest is Professor Beverly McIver. Beverly McIver is a powerhouse in contemporary American art. She has charted a new direction as an African-American woman artist committed to producing art that examines racial, gender, social, and occupational identity. Her work is in the collection of the National Portrait Gallery at the Smithsonian, the North Carolina Museum of Art, the Weatherspoon Art Museum, the Baltimore Museum of Art, and several other venues, as well as significant corporate and private collections. Beverly McIver is currently the Eben Shade Professor of the Practice and Studio Arts at Duke University. She's also served as the SunTrust Endowed Chair, Professor of Art at North Carolina Central University. And prior to that appointment, she taught at Arizona State, Duke University, North Carolina State University, and North Carolina Central, and has held residencies at the nation's leading artist communities. Some compelling aspects of Beverly McIver's life are documented in the Emmy-nominated film Raising Renee, which tells the story of the impact of her promise to care for her sister after the passing of their mother. Some of her recent art honors, which are much too lengthy for me to enumerate here, include a year-long residency at the American Academy in Rome, the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Anyone Can Fly Foundation, and she was named as one of the top 10 in painting and art in America in 2011. She's received numerous grants and awards, including the anonymous Was a Woman Foundation grant, a John Simon Guggenheim Fellowship, a Radcliffe Fellowship from Harvard University, a Marie Walsh Sharp Foundation Award, and many, many others. A career survey of Beverly McIver's work begins at the Scottsdale Museum of Contemporary Art in 2022, before touring the country. She's currently curating a show of contemporary African-American artists working in North Carolina for the Craven Allen Gallery in Durham this year. And I was just so excited to learn more and more about Beverly McIver's work. In a recent interview, she talked a lot about what she's been doing over the course of the pandemic. And I was inspired by what she said about the ability or the desire that she had to follow her intuition, to use the pandemic for positive, and to use it, well, as she said, as a way of speaking her truth. In describing her painting, she said that my voice felt loud and unapologetic. I felt power in speaking my truth. So I think that's a good lesson for all of us. I don't think I've done justice to all of the career accomplishments that she's done, but I hope that you will join me in welcoming Professor Beverly McIver now as she shares some aspects of her work. I'll turn it over to Professor McIver.
Thank you, Melvin. That was quite an introduction. Wow. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm happy to share my work with you. I just want to, I put together a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation. And as Melvin said, I really, really listened to my intuition. And just like an hour ago, my intuition was saying, you need to show this. And I thought, what? I can't. So at the end of this first presentation, then I'm going to switch over and share, because my intuition is telling me in the audience, somebody needs to hear this. So work with me on that one. Okay, Melvin, first slide. This is my sister, Renee. Renee was born mentally disabled. She has the mindset of a third grader, although she's 61 years old. She also has epilepsy. So this social justice thing started with me, growing up with Renee. And she's as Melvin said, when my mother passed away, she asked me if I would take care of Renee. So, and I said, yes. Next slide. Is the next slide the stop? Oh, sorry. Okay, so not yet, please. Again, as Melvin said, when I was a fellow at the Radcliffe Institute of Advanced Studies, I met these filmmakers, Gene Jordan and Steve Asher, who are also fellows. And they said, we want to do a movie about you, right? And I was just thinking, okay, whatever, home video kind of thing. Anyway, I look horrible throughout this entire film because I failed to wear a bra and put on makeup or anything. because I was thinking it was a home video. So here's a clip of Raising Renee, which is currently available on Amazon Prime. You can play it.
Tell me about Renee.
She makes pot holders. Renee was born mentally disabled. She has the mindset of a third grader.
Remove the pain, Lord.
Appreciate your prayers, but it's fine if you can't come over.
She couldn't imagine she was not going to be here.
Our home would have been broken if that Negro had stayed. Excuse me for saying Negro so much. That's my usual vernacular.
I grew up in the projects in Greensboro, North Carolina. When I was 17, the Klan showed up with guns and killed 5 people right in front of our house. Everybody knew that I had made this promise. So everybody was asking me, what are you gonna do about Renee? Damn, I gotta get that macaroni and cheese cooked. Before I go to work tomorrow, she won't have any lunch. My God, my life as an artist has gone down the tubes. Kind of like me and Renee, like Renee said she wanted to get a boyfriend.
He has the master plan. Yes. If you worrying about something, stop it. Thank you, Lord.
I like it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. You can go to the next slide. Uh-oh. So this is Renee now. In the film, Renee moves into her own apartment and she's been living there with her cat Snowball, who just died last month. Ooh, she's very sad about that. Yeah, for the last 8 or 9 years, she's been on her own. Okay, next. So I just had to throw my babies in because they are my babies. And just to put it in context, I did not have children and I'm not married and, I live with these guys. Okay, next. So 2 years ago, I got the American Academy in Rome Fellowship. And, that's when things really started changing for me. This is a picture of the bar where we would go and have lots of drinks and wine and coffee. And the pictures behind the bar were covered with past fellows. So all the past fellows happened to be mostly white males, as you can see. And the Academy asked me if I would paint the 5 Black people who were there the year that I was there, which was record breaking, that there was that many of us there at the same time. And so I painted these images of, and they hung them in the midst of the sea of white males, right? And they currently reside in that, on that wall. Okay, next. I want to talk to you about my cousin, Lonnie B. Next. So Lonnie is what I call him my favorite cousin. And the reason, he was sort of the male figure in my life when I was growing up. And next, every time Lonnie goes out, he's often pulled over by the cops in Greensboro, North Carolina, because he looks like somebody they're looking for. And, the cops, always say, I'm sorry, apologize. They show a picture of the person that they're looking for, like to say, don't you look like him? And it just makes Lonnie really mad. Next. So Lonnie has been really, really great about the idea of letting me use him in the way to shine a light on Black Lives Matter, Black men who are pulled over all the time, sometimes killed. I mean, thank God Lonnie hasn't been killed. And it was last year, the People for the American Way asked me if I would participate in Enough of Trump, which is what it says down at the bottom, campaign. And so what they did was, what they did was they took the images that I had created. This is Lonnie again, pulling rope away from his face. And they made billboards of them all across the United States. Next. So the billboard, one of the billboards of Lonnie this is in Wisconsin. Next. So enough, that was a slogan, figure out, enough of Trump. So this is a friend of mine who I made another, that became another billboard. Next. So these billboards started popping up everywhere. I mean, this was in Detroit. Next. I think this one was in Arizona. This one was in Atlanta, Georgia. So really, I was thinking, oh my God, here I am, art making a political statement. And even though I knew that, I had never participated in that way. My artwork has always been about my life, the fragility, people in the margin, etc. Next. So the other thing that happened in the midst, this was, all of this happened, the billboard, during COVID. And I started playing, I ordered this fabric, the Black Lives Matter fabric. And I was like, what can I do with this? And this woman had on body paint, and I ended up making a painting out of her, Black Lives Matter. And then next, the next painting is of some little kids that I saw. And for a long time, I had this painting for like 2 or 3 years. And the block that the kid was holding up was always blank because I couldn't figure out exactly what needed to go in there. And Black Lives Matter went in there just perfectly. So I had to wait for the right text. Next. It's really, really important for me to build a legacy and to reach back to people, women and brown people, and help them in some way. So what I decided to do was, next, is buy 11 acres of land in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And this is at the very beginning stage where the trucks just came through, and we tried to save as many trees as we could. Next. But I built, or I'm in the process of building, a house and a residency, which will be called Renee's Place, after my sister. And the residency will be, it'll be a C3 non-for-profit, which means that an artist of color or women can come there for 4 to 6 weeks and live. They'll have a studio space, a place to live, food, and they'll get a stipend of $1,200 for the month. So next. So that's what my legacy is. And we're right in the middle. The house should be done by next month. Yay! And I don't know if you're aware, but Billy Zinn and Todd Williams, excuse me, the architects who designed the Obama Library, have agreed to design Renee's Place pro bono for me because they believe in what I'm doing and they want to help. So they're going to do that, take out time to do that in spite of their busy schedule. I think that's it, right? Ooh, my favorite. So I found this I was like, who is this girl? I actually saw this, and it was Brene Brown who first had her name down at the bottom. I was like, Renee said that, but then I found out that it was Sonia Renee Taylor. And I just love this because I think that we're not going to go back to normal, because normal never was. And our pre-corona existence was not normal, other than we normalize greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long to return, my friends. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity in nature. So I live by this. I love it. I think it's powerful. And, I want to leave you with that. Do I have 5 minutes still? Am I out of time?
I haven't been keeping careful watching
Oh,
the
okay.
time. It's 6:23 now. So
Okay, I'm gonna do 5 minutes. Do you should I pull this up on my screen? Should I screen share?
certainly.
Or do you have it?
No, I
You
don't. Yeah, I
That's
don't have
okay.
that one, but you want to.
No problem. I'm gonna do screen share. So, in the midst of me, let's see here, desktop. In the midst of me preparing that to talk about social justice, my brain was like, you need to talk about this. You need to share this with them. I thought, oh, Jesus. So, but I decided to listen to my intuition because it's just been so smart. Can you see the screen?
No, we're not seeing it yet.
Oh, okay. Well, let it be said that I am a computer idiot and that perhaps I don't know how to share my screen. Oh, yes, there we go.
We're seeing end of slideshow, we're seeing. Is that
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that it? Can you
There we
see?
go.
Fantastic. So I'm
Yes.
just going to skip through this because a lot of this is, and go down to slide number 81, because this was the part that my intuition said you must share, because I think it's important. So as soon as I get my apologies. Okay. So the one thing that I have learned that is still trying to be open and be open for flexible in who I am and everything. So a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to work with Aiko, who is a dancer that lives in New York. And we got together and we were doing this thing about caretaking, right? I was taking care of my sister. She was taking care of her 94-year-old mother. Long story short, I was going to I had planned to go to Japan to meet her mother and take pictures. Well, she called me, 5 months early and said, if you want to meet my mother, you better get over here because she's dying. So I was like, oh my God. 24 hours later on a plane, I ended up in Japan, right? My first time. And I ate lots of good food, of course, fresh. And it was interesting because I was the only Black person I saw the entire time I was there. Everybody else was Asian, and everybody was staring at me and saying, look at that girl, just kidding. And this kid was touching me because he was like, I've never seen you before, somebody your skin color. But the main reason that I was there was to meet Aiko's mother, who was in the house, lying in a box, because they don't cremate. And she was packed in ice, which is how she was preserved. So I would go in, Aiko would say, go talk to my mother. And I would go in, here she is, lying in a beautiful, she just looked like she was asleep, right? So I did this, the funeral was so backed up, the crematory, that we had to wait 7 days before we could cremate her. And the experience of being you know, in a whole totally different culture, and being at this funeral was just unbelievable. I mean, I'm still making paintings about this experience, and all the rituals that they go through. And the thing that I learned and took away from this experience is that regardless, doesn't matter if you're Asian, it doesn't matter. We all grieve the same as human beings. It's a loss. And that's her box going into the crematory. And they close it, and then you wait for an hour, and then they come back with the ashes, right? So there's her mom's ashes. I mean, this was just unbelievable. And then there's a big dinner celebration with more good food. It snowed that day, which was unbelievable. More good food. And then after 2 weeks of being in Japan with Eiko, that's Eiko standing there, I left and I came back home and made this painting of Eiko and I together, which was for the American Dance Festival. They made a poster, and I made these paintings. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Mckeever. Fascinating work. I'm so excited to get to the Q&A portion and when we can have a discussion. But before we do that, we have another exciting guest here. Our second speaker of the evening is none other than Valerie Coleman. And I am, I've gotten to know her a lot, quite well over the past few years. Was really delighted when she joined our faculty at the University of Miami just a few years ago. Valerie Coleman is an iconic artist who has paved a unique path as a Grammy-nominated flutist, composer, and entrepreneur. Named Performance Today's 2020 Classical Woman of the Year and regarded as, quote, one of the top 35 women composers, unquote, as listed in the Washington Post by critic Anne Midgett. She is also an alumna of the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center, CMS, too, laureate of Concert Artists Guild, the flutist and founder of the performer-composer trio Umama Wamama. Perhaps most notably, Valerie Coleman is the creator, founder, and former flutist of the acclaimed Imani Winds, an ensemble whose performances and original works have redefined wind chamber music with performances that span the globe. Imani Winds' legacy is documented and featured in a dedicated exhibit of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. Valerie Coleman's multifaceted career has led her to be featured with the Philadelphia Orchestra, the Atlanta Symphony, the Hartford Symphony, Boston University Tanglewood Institute, Boston Symphony Orchestra, Carnegie Hall, Kennedy Center, just to name a few. She's in high demand as a host for a host of festival and collegiate multidisciplinary residencies, including the Phoenix Chamber Music Society, Virginia Tech, Oberlin College, Orchestra of St. Luke's, University of North Dakota, and so forth and so on. Her passion for chamber music performance is what guided her to become a top advocate, mentor, and specialist of the field with an extensive performance history of premieres and collaborations at festivals and chamber music societies across the United States. Her work as a recording artist features an extensive discography with Imani Winds and appearances with albums by the Wayne Shorter Quartet, Steve Coleman, the Council of Balance, Chick Corea, the Brubeck Brothers, Edward Simon, and many others on several different recording labels. And both her compositions and performances are regularly heard on the air nationally via Sirius XM, NPR, WNYC, WQXR, and Minnesota Public Radio, and abroad, including Radio France, Australian Broadcast Company, and Radio NZ. Her work as a composer has garnered several awards as well, such as the Herb Alpert Awards, Ragdale Prize, Van Leer Fellowship, and many, many others. I should also add that advocacy and mentorship of artists and emerging ensembles is vital to Professor Coleman, and she has immensely enjoyed their success over the years. For example, in 2011, she created the Imani Winds Chamber Music Festival, a summer mentorship program in New York City that has welcomed musicians from over 100 institutions, both nationally and abroad. In 2019, I had the great honor of giving a pre-concert talk before her performance here at the University of Miami.
So good.
Thank you. And you know, in discussing some of her works, for example, she has a piece called Portraits of Langston, and she describes it as you know, it's her take on Langston Hughes' poetic memories of Harlem and Europe. And she said that, you know, she chose Langston Hughes not because of who he is in literature, but because he was, in fact, an eyewitness to legends born. His poems are so descriptive of the era with references to particular settings and individuals that influenced him: Josephine Baker, Helen Keller, the nightlife music of Harlem jazz clubs and Parisian cabarets. And, you know, and with regard to her piece, Umoja, which I think we'll hear some more about, you know, she spoke to me about it the day before that concert, and she called it a source of inspiration. The idea of unity, a source of inspiration, a kind of go-to muse. You know, I too am inspired to strive for unity, and as idealistic and romantic as it sounds. And so I really appreciated that aspect of her work. And I just would add, just to sort of finish up here, that, you know, the call for unity that Professor Coleman embraces relies not on a facile homogeneity, but rather on a willingness or an insistence, perhaps, that to celebrate the tremendous variation that exists in the human family and to flourish together as a family, realizing that our differences make us stronger. There's perhaps a particular joy that comes from seeking common ground with others across boundaries of language, ethnicity, race, class, gender, and nation. And Professor Coleman's work helps us to realize and understand that in a more profound way. So with that, I will turn it over to Professor Coleman, and I hope that you will join me in welcoming her as she talks a little bit about her work. And I will share the screen.
Wow, thank you so much for that kind introduction and kind words. I'm really grateful to be here at the Frost School of Music, where I have such amazing colleagues. So I just want to thank the Lowe Museum, Dr. Butler, Jody Seifer for the opportunity to share my work with you. But more importantly, I just want to talk to you, Beverly Mckeever. There was so much in your presentation that told me that you are not only a friend, but you're a friend of humanity. And in speaking your truth, you are a compass for us all. And I'm blown away by your presentation, by your art, and the way you walk in life. And as a fellow creator, I can only strive to do any of that you have done. So I'm just blown away, and I'm so grateful that you shared that with us. I want to present to you my work in my life as a hybrid artist. What does a hybrid artist mean? It is actually the sharing of two disciplines within a holistic form, more than one discipline, I should say. And my particular art form is dual in nature between performing and composing. In any other genre, this particular duality is not unusual. But somehow in classical music, in Western classical music, this duality has been lost over time, even though its history and evolution of music is steeped deeply within the idea of performers who also compose. So it's replaced now in today's age by the stigma of not being good enough in either discipline. So I've made it my life's work to champion that duality and to reintroduce it to academia in such a way that it is inclusive. Because when we include this duality, hybridity, we start to be able to understand different genres and different cultures. And from there, the music can evolve. So the title of my presentation here is called Diary of a Mad Black Artist, because quite frankly, in order to introduce hybridity is literally going against the grain of what is considered standard classical music, which I dare say has elements of exclusivity. And some scholars have argued that it's also rooted in supremacy as well. But I think that being a hybrid artist, there has to be a level of being a little bit crazy. To, like I said, to go against the grain and to pave one's path. So there we are, a play on Tyler Perry's words, Diary of a Mad Black Woman. So thank you so much, Dr. Butler, for sharing the slides. If we could actually skip over this slide and go to the next one. I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky. My family lives there. And what you see is my home that's there right now. I haven't been home for about a year, but this is on Dixie Highway in Louisville, Kentucky. And this is about 3 blocks away from where Breonna Taylor was shot and killed. And if you go 2 blocks north and 3 blocks west, you'll end up at Muhammad Ali's home, where he was born and raised. His father was a fixture in the neighborhood. He was a painter, he was a creator. He would paint people's houses and paint murals. So he was somebody that we all knew in the neighborhood. You'll see right there in my home front there are 3 houses in a row, and they're right next to a liquor store. And the house in the middle is where I was born and raised. And that room right there that's boarded up, that's my bedroom. That's where I'm, you know, and that's where my mom lives. And if you look at the purple building right there, that is my family's business, a daycare that my mom and dad created early on, about a good almost 60 years ago. And the idea was that they would serve the community and also have a legacy to pass down to their children. And then the house on the end, that very end, that boarded up house right there, my dad, he purchased that when I was about 8 years old and he died when I was 9. So it's been a house of potential, even to this day. But you know, hopefully one day I'll be able to give back to the community and create a juke joint of sorts in that way. But what you guys don't see is the start of my career as a composer, my interests, and I have a love for the human experience. I have a love for creating works that identify the highs and lows of the human experience and bringing, shedding light and shedding empathy on what we do, how we live, regardless of your culture. And so for me, it all began in the backyard of that purple building. I used to sit on those steps and watch the sun go down. And I would listen to, if you don't mind to go to the next slide, I would listen to the radio. And I had never gone to a classical music concert before, but I learned early on about Aaron Copland in the top left, Antonin Dvorak, who's in the top right, Beethoven, bottom left, and Mozart, bottom right. So these men, these white men, were my early influences. And for some reason, I believed that I could be a composer just like them. I had no clue of demographic, social, economic things as a child. I just had the purest belief that I could be a composer like them. So I would sit in the backyard and just listen to the radio. And one of my best memories is the playtime that my mother had, that she gave us as kids, because she ran a daycare. She was somebody who knew how to just let kids be and develop and give them exposure and find out what they like and allow them to grow. So we had a little keyboard in our house, and that was a part of my playtime. I would just create melodies, me and my sisters. I'm the baby of 3. And it got to the point after a while that I just wanted to start documenting my melodies that I created in the little songs. So I started to create notation for myself because I had no prior experience to music training. It wasn't until about 4th grade that, when the flute was introduced to me, that the whole world just started to open up. And all of a sudden I start to learn the notation that I had been waiting for my entire life. If we can move to the next slide. Little did I know that I probably didn't realize it until I was much older, that probably my biggest influence was Muhammad Ali. And the reason why I say that is because he was somebody who was able to recondition his mind and look at doors and create doors and windows for himself through the power of his mind. And I'd like to think that he is not only who he is not only a part of me, but a part of all the people in the West End of Louisville, because there are certain attributes that he carried with him as he walked in the world. One of the things was he knew how to talk a lot of mess. And so that is uniquely a Kentucky thing, a West End thing. But I'd like to think that my music has a little bit of that tough talk every now and then when it needs to be. So going from fourth grade all the way up, I went to youth orchestra. My mom, she made a way, she found a way. And it wasn't until one gentleman one day came to my youth orchestra, and he auditioned people for the Tanglewood Institute, Boston University Tanglewood Institute. And I went in and I had no clue of anything. And he asked me to play for him, and I played a little concerto. And then he asked me if I played piccolo, and I said yes. And he was like, great, what do you want to play? And I said, Stars and Stripes. And he said, okay, go ahead and go for it. And I said, what key do you want it in? And then 2 weeks later, I ended up getting a full scholarship to go to Massachusetts, to Lenox, Massachusetts, for Tanglewood Institute. And that was a life-changing moment, because I wanted to make sure that I took advantage, but also bring all the scores I had ever worked on with me, just to be able to finally have people read through my scores. And one of the biggest memories, one of the most defining moments was when one of the faculty members decided that they wanted to work on one of my pieces, which was a flute trio. And they spent an entire hour just treating it like it was an actual composition. And for me at 17, that was truly defining. I thought to myself, maybe I can be a composer. So I went to Boston University after that. And the thing about Boston University is that it's a very traditional place when it comes to music composition and theory, the Western format of things. And I just remember being the only chocolate chip in the cookie, and also being the only woman. And I went through that process of learning. However, at a certain point, I was told that I was not good enough to be a composer, and that I should think about just sticking to flute performance. And so I actually dug in. The Muhammad Ali came out, and I dug in, and I fought for the right to be within that department, within that particular degree program. Little did I know later on, when I talked to one of the most preeminent composers, women composers of today, Missy Mazzoli, she told me that very same person told her that she should marry rich. So I think I think that there was a little bit of bad influences there, and I hate to shudder. I hate to think how many women composers went through those doors and were turned away by this one person. But I'm so glad that me and Missy Mazzoli, we decided just to keep on going. After I graduated from Boston University, I went to the New School, which is New School University in New York City, and I created this organization called the African Culture Organization. And I created a work called Umoja. And little did I know that work Umoja would be something that would follow me for the rest of, for my career, even thus far, because Umoja stands for unity in Swahili. And it was during that time I started to worry about the idea of graduating and not having any kind of job whatsoever. So the idea of creating a woodwind quintet of people of color and seeing what our shared combined, our culture would lend itself in terms of interpretation of the standard classical works. Little did I know that the work Umoja would transfer itself into Imani Winds and be the glue that kept us together as we did competitions and things. And you can go to the next slide. This is Imani Winds. And this is about a good 2 or 3 years into our genesis. And at the time, I was thinking, this is going to be great. We're going to become role models. And the rest of the group was thinking, okay, what time is it? When can I go home? And over time, everyone came on board because they started to really invest in this notion that we had a obligation, had a responsibility and potential as role models just by working on becoming excellent. So Melvin, if you don't mind, I want to go back to that second slide. There you go. That's the one. Yep. And before you play, I'll explain this. This is the women's choir piece that I mentioned in creating an organization. And this organization went on to work hand in hand with the NAACP, the New York chapter, in doing performances within the New York public school system. And so Umoja, unity, is one of the principles of Kwanzaa. And it is actually the very first principle. So, and it's a part of a suite, but it seemed like a really great piece to transfer into wind quintet writing. And you can actually play it. Thank you.
I'm going to share that from a different screen because I've got it here.
You the man.
Window. 1 second. There we go. All right. You seeing that?
Don't forget the share computer sound.
Let's make sure I did that. Yes.
Woo-hoo. Yay. So funny enough, when I graduated from Boston University, that place, being with that particular situation where you were the minority, a severe minority within that demographic, it really undermined sense of self. So I went many years thinking that I couldn't possibly be a composer because I didn't look like a composer. And I'm female. But playing with Imani Winds was that healing thing that redefined self, reaffirmed self. And it wasn't until I got an interview or a review from the Los Angeles Times that referred to me as a composer that I thought, hey, maybe there's something there. Maybe I can be a composer. So over the years, I wrote for the group. And I learned that my creating style is to write things for people whenever people are in need. And so as we went on, the group was definitely doing many things. And I just continued to write for them, if you don't mind going through the screen. And one of the things, we were winning competitions, next screen. One of the things that was really important to the ensemble was giving back. And so we created this notion because we were traveling about a good 250 to like 300, almost 300 days out of the year. And so, but we would only see students for a master class. And so a lot of relationships were built, and we wanted to be able to mentor them over a longer period of time. So we created the Imani Winds Chamber Music Festival, which was one of my dream babies that I went ahead and went to the Juilliard School, and I approached it and I said, let's do this festival. And we worked it out, and we, proposals back and forth, all of these things. And finally, we were able to launch the festival at Lincoln Center. And the demographic of diversity was a good 30% year by year, sometimes a little bit more. And it's something that is still going on in today's day and age. And after being with Imani Winds for 2 decades, I decided to retire from the group. And it was a leap of faith, but little did I know that it was a leap of faith that I needed to take. Next tab, please. Because we're all having kids and we're all living life. And it was extremely important to realize a different path and just try to grow as an artist, because when you're a part of a collective, it's such an amazing thing, but your identity gets absorbed into the collective. So after writing for so long for the group, I started to ask the question of, if the group wasn't my safety net, how would I write and how would I create? What is the truth? What is my own truth? And so I took a leap of faith and I left the group. And shortly after that, I got I got a commission from the Philadelphia Orchestra. And it was a commission that was based on the idea of Umoja. Umoja came back around. The Philadelphia Orchestra heard about it. They said, we want to program it. And so that's what happened. And it turns out that I was the first African-American woman to be commissioned by the orchestra. Why it took them so long to commission a Black woman, I don't know. But it is an honor nonetheless. And one of the things that's happening right now with the orchestra is that they are investing in their composers, and they're seeking out more and more composers of color and just making their contribution. And many organizations could do the same, and some of them seem performatory, but I really do believe that the Philadelphia Orchestra is making that investment. Just recently, I was commissioned for another work from them to celebrate, or rather to give strength to Next step, please. To give strength to the frontline workers and to really just show solidarity for all of us. 7 o'clock shout was written within the scope of 2 weeks. It happened right when everything started to shut down. And it was premiered by video. And so I'd like to play a little bit of that for you. 7 o'clock shout is very interesting because not only is it an anthem, but it's something that I want to capture the idea, the energy, the spirit of people shouting out the windows and banging their pots and pans. I want to capture the solitude, which is what you're going to hear with the solo trumpet right at the beginning. And I also want to capture this idea of this lush landscape that recognize Mother Earth giving back, or Mother Earth replenishing itself while everybody is shuttered indoors. And also the nurturing, the connection of nurturing with the frontline workers as well. So this is 7 o'clock shout. Thank you, everyone, so much for the opportunity to share my music with you.
Wow. Let me just get this screen out of here. Seems to be stuck here. Whoops. Let's see here. There we go. All right. That was amazing. Thank you, Professor Coleman and Professor Mcgeever, for both of you. 7:05, but I think we've got some time for some questions. I could ask you guys, about a dozen questions and still probably be scratching the surface. But if I may, I'd like to start off by asking one that I think resonates with one that is also posed in the Q&A box by Director of the Center for Humanities, Meg Homer, who had to step off the meeting off this event to go to something else. But I really am struck in the work that both of you have created and the way in which you talk about your work with the 3 Ps, I'll call them, the personal, the professional, and the political, and the ways in which these 3 Ps intersect. So could you talk to us a little bit about that? And how over the course of your career, you've kept these plates spinning, the professional, the personal, and the political. I just would love for you to say a little bit about how these 3 words work for you in the work that you do and your sort of philosophy of art, perhaps. I don't know if Professor Coleman, you want to start off, or we could go back to Professor
To
McKeever.
me, they're all synonymous. They all work together. It's synergistic. It is holistic. It's the way I look at the duality of composing and performing as a hybrid thing. I really just do believe that the way we write, the way we create, has a reason and a purpose, and that is its own truth. And it comes from being able to give back. It comes from the having the bully pulpit at times to be able to create something that might transform through your own responsibility and need to do that, to step up to the plate and contribute in your own way. So to me, it's all the same. It's all together.
Well, I'd like to say that, I had a friend recently call me fearless. And I was like, I'm not fearless. I'm afraid of everything. I'm always afraid to take the leap. I'm always afraid I'm a creature of comfort. So I think I spoke about my intuition and my voice. It tells me what to do all the time, where to go, how to do this, blah, blah, blah. And when I stop listening to it, I fail. So I just try to be flexible in who I am to listen to that voice, because I know it's going to guide me professionally and personally in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And part of the reason I ask is that, I don't think that everybody does this, at least not as powerfully as the 2 of you do. I really do think you're fearless, and I think I want to be like you guys when I grow up. You folks when I grow up, I should say, guys. But it's also, I think there's a school of thought that out there, that says, that you should keep these things separate, and we find this in sports and, in the entertainment industry, among artists, musicians of all kinds, that some people just want you to kind of entertain, or just play your music, or just paint the paint. Why you got to put politics in it? I mean, and this is actually resonates with what Meg Homer asked in the chat. She says, I may be wrong, but I suspect that artists of color may feel greater pressure to use their art to make socio-political statements, much in the same way we often wrongly place the burden of diversity work and social justice work on people of color. If this is or has been true for you, how do you cope with that pressure and reconcile this feeling with the desire to have your work centered around less political topics and instead on the human experiences you want to cover? Would either of you or both of you like to comment on that? I don't know. Is there pressure?
Well, I think, I do focus on the human experience. I think that's how it started. And, with Renee, the simplicity of my sister, who, I consider my greatest work of art, with letting her liberating her to live on her own and be who she is. I just try to keep it simple and, just live through her. Now, the political, I wasn't recognizing that until COVID, actually. And then I was like, oh my God, I got to say something. I got to do something. Oh my God. So that's how that happened.
Professor Coleman, any thoughts on that too?
She said it. I mean, the human experience. And I feel more of a responsibility towards that, towards the idea of a unity than to feel the pressure of stating any kind of social, political things, because it's already embedded into the music. When you think about humanity, you think about transforming lives and just creating empathy, then it's already there. It's not a burden, it's a gift, it's a joy. It is, I think, the task that is given to us from a divine source. So
Wow.
I don't think of it as, like, oh, this weight, If anything, you see the weight of the world around you, and you just want to be able to lift and lighten that load.
You're both reminding me of Nina Simone, and you probably have heard this famous quote from her where she says, I can't help it. It's an artist's duty, as far as I'm concerned, is to reflect the times. And if you see that interview, she says it with this just conviction, unapologetic. And it's fascinating to me that you're both educators as well as artists, right? And so I wonder if that is, it's obviously for me a descriptive, issue. It describes what you're doing, reflecting the times. And I'm curious if you want to comment on Nina Simone's quote, but also the extent to which for you that's prescriptive in the students that you have. To what extent do you think that should apply to everyone, and are you working to instill that in the students that you teach?
Absolutely. And Dr. Butler, I kind of look towards you and the work that you're doing here at the Frost School of Music, because there's a lot of students here that do not have a single clue about Black history and the amazing artists that have come through. And I can't tell you how many times I've, stood up on the stage and asked for a show of hands of how many people know about Josephine Baker. And it's only just like this, maybe 3 or 4 people. Wow. And for somebody a historical figure who has given so much to humanity, that to me tells me that there's a responsibility that we have to pass on this knowledge. It is our ancestors' knowledge that we're passing on. And through that ancestors' knowledge, we're inspiring people to create a forward motion with the evolution of art in and of itself. So we're caretakers, we're nurturers, we're storytellers, we are historians, and boy, is it a joy to be.
Yeah, sort of reminds me, I had a student once sitting on the front row when I was teaching at the University of Virginia, and he was like, why are we talking about race in a music class? Like he just, and I feel like that there are students who really kind of resist that. And so it's great to hear you talk about that. Professor Mcgeever, would you also like to say something about
that? Well, I'll just add that at the beginning of my class, I always go around the room and I say, please tell me one thing that you want to unlearn. Like it's something that your parents said, you're Republican because they're Republican. What is it, that you as an individual want to unlearn? And it's pretty amazing what they come up with, because it allows them to really sort of reflect on, wait a minute, all my influences and who I am is based on, culture, how I grew up, etc. And that there are biases and things that you want to drop, get rid of in your life. I grew up very religious, and so the idea that I had all these gay friends, I was like, oh my God, they're saying all of them are going to hell for real? That's something that I really had to unlearn. So I bring it up in my class every week.
That's really inspiring. Yeah, we're all trying to make the world a better place, and I hope that the next generation will follow in your footsteps for sure. Yeah, I'm curious if you have gotten pushback or resistance, with regard to the work that you're doing and this sort of overlap with political issues, or or how has the reception been for the work that you do, particularly when you deal with these themes that have to do with race or some some of these historical issues that are touchy subjects for folks?
Well, I think because of this Black Lives Matter and George Floyd and all the others who have lost their lives, has made a bit of a shield for me to be able to talk about it without people feeling like, oh God, here she goes, she's Black, she's talking Black stuff, here we go. It's been a great opportunity to really sort of talk about that and to make my students, my 1%ers, soldiers. Care about more than just your little self, and to recognize that it's a big world.
Yeah. Awesome.
Amen. I second that.
I want to ask you about COVID. I mean, Professor Mcgeever, you gave us a nice quote, and I really like it, from Sonia Renee Taylor, about normalcy. And that we don't want to go back to new normal, the way it was before. And my sense that, maybe from both of you, is that the COVID pandemic has, it's sparked some change in maybe how you see your work and the role that it's doing in the world. Can you talk a little bit about the before and after, and where do we go from here if we're not going back to the, now that, we're not really out of the pandemic yet, but, can you give us, where's your work heading now that we've been going through this, we've gone through the Trump era? How has this transformed, if at all, the work that you see yourself doing and moving forward? And I should, while I'm asking this, I should dovetail with Keith Landon's question in the chat. He says, please let us know how it's been for you both during the relative isolation of the pandemic. It seems you both thrive on interpersonal relationships and the creativity that flows when you have these opportunities. So that's a kind of compound question, I suppose.
Thank you so much for saying that. I am an introvert, so I've actually I've been enjoying this time to really just be so introspective and just looking towards the cocoon in order to create and to be. So all of this, we need to just do what we can in this day and age of the killings and all of these things. We just need to really just try to do what we can to comfort ourselves and create that healthy place within all of us. So, I'm good. But in terms of just the creativity and everything, how that's working within the midst of things, I think just stepping back away from everything and having a perspective, then you can really take a look at what is needed. And you can take a look at what people need in their day-to-day. We're all going through something, right? So it's a matter of just having that perspective and that mindfulness. And so compositionally speaking, when I write for people, that's what I'm looking at, what they need in that moment to heal, to be uplifted. So I think that during this pandemic has truly, I think that's increased, just trying to create that sense of awareness to that. And that's something we'll all of us always work on.
Well, I have a show up right now at Craven Allen Gallery. It's called The Light Within. And it's maybe 30 paintings that I created during COVID. So like Valerie, I'm an introvert. And so I was like, thank you, God, I don't have to go to work. Can I get paid? Woo! So it was truly a blessing to have that time to sit with myself. I do want to say that I tell people all the time, it's okay to mourn
Yes.
what was your life before. It's okay, because
Mm.
we're not going back.
Mhm.
It's okay to mourn that loss, but then you got to pull yourself up and make it better, do something better. And I think that's how I really, really got excited about Rennie's place. I can't wait to move to the woods and give
That
back
house
to
looks
other
amazing.
artists. Thank you.
I'm coming
Wow.
to
I want you to. I totally want you to. I love
bring
you.
in suitcases, and I'm gonna stay for a little bit. I'm gonna walk out with the full symphony when I'm done.
Really? I know. Yeah, it's really, it's so inspiring to see the joy that comes from your work. But there's also, and I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question, because it's in some ways a painful question, because it's about a question about pain that I see in both of your work as well. I mean, Professor Coleman, you deal with the middle passage at some point. These are just, aspects of trauma and pain, painful aspects of our past. And Professor Mcgeever, with your work with the ropes, I mean, the sort of symbols of binding and tying, and your own stories of sort of overcoming hardship and on a family level, on a personal level, and I guess I'm wondering if you would like to sort of comment on this the role of pain, or perhaps the role of dissonance in tension, because I see that and I hear that in both of your work. I experience that. And as a jazz musician, for me, I mean, I think of someone like John Coltrane, who embraced dissonance, almost as a way of, as part of his quest to manifest the divine in what he performed, so that his music was like a manifestation of God, a kind of theophany, if you will. And not to get all deep and spooky about it, but I'm just wondering if how does pain and dissonance, how do these elements work in your work, and how important are they to you?
I think it's really important. I'm with John Coltrane, that I've been accused of loving the underbelly, the things that we don't talk about, death, or cremation, and going back, all those things. And I think it's important. I feel like it's my duty to expose people to it. I have to say, this is life. No one's exempt from dying.
Yeah.
I don't care how much money or whatever, you're going to die, period. And the fact that society really shuns that, and we don't get to talk about it or even plan for it, have a will, people, is horrible. It's really horrible and painful for the people you leave behind.
Yeah. My wife and I were just talking about that yesterday. We need to get a will.
Get a will.
Yeah. Wow. Professor Coleman?
You mentioned the middle passage, and there's so much of that is happening today. There's so much of this inhumanity towards one another, and to me there's two sides of dissonance. One is to shed light on the inhumanity and evils of the world, but then there's the other side that allows a person to grieve and allows a person to heal through the acknowledgement of pain. And I'd like to think, and I know that music is capable of really being that source of healing. So we have to go there. We have to unearth the things that we don't want to talk about in an everyday conversation. And we have to just let ourselves, as an artist, I'm afraid about how dark, I can think of things and put them into music. There's two different ways. And then there's a subconscious. The first way is the literal way of creating sounds based off of what you see and what you have read about and experienced and whatever it may be. But then there's also this less literal way that's more symbolic. But somewhere in between the two, there is the subconscious message that comes across of pain and of of recognizing humanity, but it does not fully, in my mind, when I'm creating, it doesn't fully manifest itself until after the work is fully created. In other words, there is the intention, but then the subconscious is working at the same time all the while.
Wow. That's pretty deep. I'm gonna have to think about that for a while. The intention and the subconscious, that's awesome. Oh man, there's so many things I can talk about. There's Jody Seifer sent me a question here. She said, can you please ask Beverly to say more about, is it Aiko Otake?
Oh,
And what drove her to want to meet her in Japan? Why she was such an inspiration? Aiko was a movement-based performance artist, seeing connections.
well, it was actually Jody who is the head of the American Dance Festival, which happens in Durham, North Carolina every year. And Aiko and her husband Como stopped dancing because he's older, and he can't do it. So Aiko said, you know what, I'm gonna keep dancing. I'm gonna find me some people, to collaborate with, and I'm gonna dance. And so Jody at the American Dance Festival called me up and said, I want you to meet this woman. She said, do you know her? And I was like, I don't know her. And, I was like, who? She dance? I don't dance. I was just, but I met her. She like showed up at my door at 10 o'clock at night. That she had just gotten a plane, got off a plane from Colorado. And we spent 3 days together trying to figure out how we were going to collaborate. And then she told me about her mother. And, at first I was just going to do paintings of her dancing. And then it turned into caretaking. And, it was beautiful. She's doing this thing right now where she's walking or dancing in graveyards because it was all based on or inspired by our collaboration together. And I did get on stage with her during the American Dance Festival, and which, so anyway, that was scary. That was really scary. But I danced, and the backdrop were, my paintings blown up on a big screen.
Wow. That is so cool. That's funny because I know we're coming to the end of time, but I was gonna sort of end with a question about this sort of multimodal potential of what you're doing, because here we have two powerful artists who happen to be Black women whose work has so much, it's so distinct, but also has things in common. And someone put in the Q&A, they didn't, it's a comment, not a question, but I'm kind of making it into a question. I said, imagine a collaboration work between these two artists. So what do you think about this? I mean, so with Professor Coleman, music and art, and Professor Mcgeever, visual art and music, what kinds of multimodal potentials do you see moving forward, or anything else that you want to comment about where your work is going from here? I would welcome that.
Well, I'm down for the cause.
Okay.
Me too.
That's all I gotta say. I'm down.
No, I feel like we're connected. Like there's this energy that, that's like radiating through this screen. If you were in person, I would hug you. Because there's something wonderful. And I think that it really is important when you find those kind of people, when you connect in that way, you should collaborate with them in some way. So that'd be great.
Ashe. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Wow. Well, I don't have any other questions, but if either of you have sort of final thoughts or anything that I have not asked that you would like to share with our audience, I would, be happy to have that as well. Before I turn it back over to Jody Seifer. Anything to leave us with?
I just want to say thank you to you, Dr. Butler, and and Beverly and Jody. This needed to happen. I think it's important to have this platform where artists can not only speak their truth, but also their process. I don't think it happens enough. So I'm really happy to be here. Blessed.
Yes. Yes, I want to echo that and just say that, we have to rise together. There's no room for it. Well, if I share it with you and you get it, then I won't get it. We have to all rise together. And if you want to see my work in person, Bernice Steinbaum Gallery right there in Miami has my work up on the wall, and you should go check it out so that you can really see the texture and the color and all of those things in person.
Can you put that in the chat? Type that out.
Sure. Oh,
Excellent.
I think I can.
Hopefully we're
I'll
able to get that in the chat,
yeah.
or we'll
Just
find
tell
a way
me
to get it to folks.
if I'm spelling it correctly.
Yeah.
Bernice Steinbaum.
Stein.
We're gonna find Bernice Steinbaum.
Is that
Well, you know, I certainly want to thank the two of you. This was a real treat for me. You know, it's the best job on earth to get to moderate a discussion between the two of you. And I've learned so much. I'm so inspired. So, and I think that anyone who watches the recording of this will be appreciative. And I'm sure our audience is as well. We can't see them or hear them, but I'm sure they're applauding. And some of the comments in the Q&A are exemplifying that. So with that, I think I'm going to exit the stage here and turn it back over to Jody Seifer for some concluding remarks, and that will take us home.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Butler and Dr. Mckeever and Dr. Coleman. You were all so inspiring, and thank you so much for sharing your personal journeys of life so far. And I'm so amazed by how much you have accomplished and given back. And I am very grateful to all three of you for sharing your evening with us and your stories. And yes, I agree, we should definitely do this again. And with that, I think, yes, and Bernice Steinbaum's gallery is in Coconut Grove, so please go and visit it. And of course, check out all three of our panelists all have websites. So if you Google their names, you will find them and you can see all of the amazing work that they have created.
Awesome. And Jody, did you say that there was going to be a sort of a questionnaire or a survey for folks after they log off of this?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. When you hit leave, it should, or end, I'm not sure which word it is, a link should pop up. And if you can fill it out, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much again. Hope everyone has a fabulous evening.
Thanks everyone for joining us, and great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you all.